Hello fellow Unreal Engine artists, designers and developers. In this new series I'll be showing you how you can build structures directly in Unreal Engine using a variety of tools and techniques. In this first episode we'll look at manual modelling, but in future episodes we'll create automated tools using splines, geometry scripts and procedural content generation. With that said, let's get into manual modelling. First of all, where is it useful to model content in Unreal Engine? Well, as you can see in this scene, it's great for simple geometric shapes, walls, doors, windows, staircases, that sort of thing. It's fairly fast and easy to use, and you get instant visual feedback and playtesting without the hassle of importing from another modelling tool. Sure, if you need more detailed or organic models, then using a DCC such as Blender, 3ds Max or Maya is really useful. I use Blender myself for modelling, but the internal tools are great for prototyping and even simple final content. So let's create a new level to show you how the manual modelling tools work. If you want to follow along with what I'm doing in this tutorial, let's start with a new project. So I'm using Unreal Engine 5.2 here. I've gone into the Games tab and I'm going to choose the third person template. The reason for that is that I can then play test my level, and I've also got a mannequin for reference as I'm creating the models. And I'm going to use Blueprint, desktop, maximum quality, no starter content, no ray tracing, and let's give it a name of modeling tutorial and create. So wait a few seconds for it to come up. And now it comes up with the sort of default map for third person. Let's create a new blank level. So do File, New Level, and we'll start with the basic level here. Click on Create. And what I'll do is I will just get rid of the floor that's in here. We'll build our own floor using the modeling tool. So select the floor, delete, and then now let's save this level, save current level. And let's be organized and create a folder called Maps, and within the Maps folder let's create the modeling level. Okay, and now we've done that, let's make sure this fires up as the level when we go into the editor or go into the game. So go into Edit, Project Settings. First of all, go into Maps and Modes, and we'll choose the Editor Startup map of modeling, and we'll also choose the game default map of modeling. And while we're here in the project settings, let's just set up some preferences for our modeling. So if you go down to the plugins section and find modeling here, you've got various options here. So if you go into modeling mode and generated assets, you can see that first of all, as you're creating content, it tells you where it's going to save it. So let's do, rather than a relative asset path, let's do a global asset path, so it always puts it in the one folder. And let's call this My Models, the folder we put it in. And don't bother using, well, I'm not going to bother using the per user folder, so it doesn't create a subfolder with my username. That's unnecessary for me as a single developer. Okay, so now we've done that. Come out of here. And the last thing I want to do in this setup is I just want to get some textures, because as a model I want to see the textures I'm going to use on the meshes, and that way we can adjust the UV maps accordingly as well. So let's go into from this add project here, Quixel Bridge. And I'll show you the ones I've used here. So I've used this Japanese roof tile, this damaged brick wall, and damaged concrete. So you can choose the ones you want, but these are the ones I've gone with. So try and find something similar to this, or if not exactly the same. So I'm going to select all three: Japanese roof tiles, damaged brick wall, damaged concrete floor. Shift select all of them. I'll just have to sign in first of all. Choose the quality you want. So I'm going to go with high quality for this. You can go with highest quality if you want. Download them if they haven't been downloaded already, and then add them to your project. And now we have those 3 folders for the 3 surfaces, which we'll use later on. And let's now move on to our first modeling. Let's begin by creating a floor tile for our scene. So to go into modeling mode, you go into the selection mode up here and choose modeling, or Shift 5 on the keyboard, and you get all these various tools available to you here. Now you'll see here there's a grid on the floor here. If you don't see that, just go into show and make sure grid set up, and it should be set up by default. And what we want to do is we want to use the tool I want to show you first of all is the cube grid tool. So it's this one here. So if you click on that, you basically get the ability to create models that are made out of cubes of various sizes, and you can also use the cubes to cut through models as well. It's a bit of a misunderstood tool, this, because really it's not just about creating blocky shapes. It's really about being able to start at a high level of detail and go into low level of detail, and not only build content but also cut through content as well. So I'm going to create a 10 meter by 10 meter tile. So let's start off by changing the snapping values here to 100. So that's 100 centimeters or 1 meter. And now if I zoom out a bit, you can see that each of these tiles, each of these squares represents 100 centimeters or 1 meter, and each of these larger areas is 10 by 10 centimeters. So you can see that at the moment my cube grid lines up with these grids on the floor because it's set to 100. You can see current block size 100 matches the snap size. We can change this later on to have smaller grid sizes or larger grid sizes. I'll show you that later on. But for now, let's just build the floor tile. So starting in this bottom corner here, I will click, left mouse click, and drag up to the top corner of a 10 by 10 tile. And now I have my selection. I can use the Q key and the E key to extrude or cut. So if I press E, it will extrude one tile. And if I press Q, it will cut by one tile. So I want it 1 meter high, so I'm going to press the E, and then I will click accept. And now I have my mesh. So that mesh has not only been created in the level, but it's also been created as an asset. So if I do Control B while it's still selected, you can see that I have a new mesh created in the My Models folder. And we can click on this and rename it to floor 10 by 10. And now we have a mesh that we can reuse around the level. So let's go back here, and the next thing I want to do is I want to set a material for this. So over here on the materials, where we've got none at the moment, I'm going to assign my concrete that I downloaded from Quixel Bridge. And you can see that it's done there here. Now at the moment I don't know how that relates in scale to a person. So let's bring in my mannequin character, and I can use that as a reference point. So come back here, go into characters, mannequins, meshes, and I'm going to pull in the Manny character here. And I'll just put him on the floor. Now if I go in close up, I can see how the floor tiling relates to the character. It's not too bad, but it's a little bit obvious that it's tiled at the moment. So let's select the floor tile again, browse to the material instance, double click to open it up. And what I'll do is I'll just change the tiling on here. So let's select the tiling, expand it out, and what I'll do is I will change the X and Y to 0.2 and 0.2, and you can see that that looks a bit more realistic in relation to the character now. So at any point in time, if you want to save all the assets in the project, just do Control Shift S, and not only the project but also all of the assets that you've been working on will be saved. Okay, and now we have got our first tile. Let's duplicate it to create a 20 meter by 20 meter area. So with the tile selected, press the Alt key on the keyboard and drag to put it into place, and again Alt key, drag another one, and finally Alt key again and drag a fourth one. And we now have a 20 meter by 20 meter area to build on. So let's move on now and create the walls and a room within the walls. So before I build the walls, I just want to show you a gotcha that might catch you out. When you're building using the cube grid tool, it's effectively building either a new asset or building on an existing asset. So depending on whether you've got something selected or not, it will be adding to it. If you've got nothing selected, it'll be creating something new. So just be careful of that. I'll show you here. If I switch off this, press escape to come out, you see at the moment I've got this floor tile selected here. So if I press cube grid and I start to build, say, a bit of a wall here and drag it up, if I click accept, you can see that it's added it to this floor tile and then duplicated it around the place. So just be careful. If you want to build new assets, make sure, let's just do Control Z, make sure that you press the escape key on the keyboard while you're in the viewport, and that will deselect everything. The same goes even if you click off it. Sometimes you select things like the sky sphere and it will try and build the cube grid on that, and then you'll get an error when you enter. So remember, escape key to deselect everything before you build something new. So what we're going to do now is we're going to use the same tool, the cube grid, and we're going to build walls that go around the perimeter here. So we're kind of building a fort here, albeit a very simple one, just to show you these tools. So choose the cube grid, and what we'll do is you could build the walls like each wall individually, or you could build the whole structure and then cut out the middle. So I'll do the latter. This time actually I'm going to go down, and in the material here I'm going to assign the material before I start creating. So I'll go down here, type brick, and choose my damaged brick wall that I got from Quicksilver Bridge. And then what I'll do is I will drag from this side of the floor all the way to the other side, and then I will press E 4 times. 1, 2, 3, 4. That creates a 4 meter high structure, and then I will select the inner part. So I've left the outer 1 meter block, and this time I'm going to press Q 4 times. 1, 2, 3, 4 until I see the floor underneath, and that's created the hollowed out structure. And now I'll click accept, and if we go in close to the wall, you can see the tiling is way too frequent for the brick, so we need to do similar to we did to the concrete. We need to go and change this material instance. So on the right hand side here we can see the material, browse to it, double click to open it up, and again let's try changing the tiling offset to 0.2 and 0.2, and that looks pretty good. So come out of here, and in relation to the character, the bricks look about the right size and scale. Okay, so let's now add an inner room. So we can either build a new asset, or maybe I just want to adjust this asset to have an inner sort of guard room. So what I'll do here is I will make sure that it is selected, or still selected, so that we're adding to it. Go back into my cube grid tool, and this time I'm going to just create a room that sort of starts not halfway, let's do it more like sort of 2/3 of the way down here. So I'm selecting these floor blocks of this wall, and I'll show you a different way here. So obviously you can press E to extrude, but what you can also do is hold the control key down on the keyboard and then use your left mouse to drag out the content. So this is kind of a more interactive approach. So drag it out 4 or 5 meters, and then I'm going to select this part of the wall here, these 4 meters, and then use Control to drag out to the other side, like that. So now we've created a room. Okay, so now we've got this room here, but we've got no doors or windows. So let's use the same tool while we're still in this mode to create a couple of doors. So I'm going to make them 3 meters tall. So drag up a 3 meter by 2 meter opening, hold the Control key down, and this time drag backwards to cut the hole in the door. And let's put another one over on this side. So again, 3 meter by 2 meter, select Control key down and then drag backwards. And now let's also create a couple of windows in here. So I'm going to just create a 2 meter window using Control to pull it back, and over here similar thing, and Control and pull it back. So at any time during this level, in fact, let's press Accept or Enter, and you can see if we do Control B, you can see there's our mesh here in the generated folder. Might be a good time to name it, room 20 by 20. And at any point in time while we're modeling here, we can test this out. So let's go into play mode. So press play, and we can see, are the doorways the right size? Yes. Are the windows right? No, they're too high. So at any point in time we can adjust our models. So let's come out of play mode up here, and let's adjust these windows, bring them down one. So make sure it's selected, go back into the cube grid tool, and what we'll do now is we will select these ones here. Let's Control drag, in fact what I think I've done here is I've pulled it out. Yeah, so don't worry if you make mistakes, you can just do that, Control drag to remove things, select things, Control drag to fill them in, and now what you can do is create the window a bit lower. So I'm selecting this one and Control and dragging out, and here Control dragging out. So now we've got lower windows, and if I go into, let's press Accept, go into play mode again, and now the windows are at a suitable height for my character to look out. Okay, and before I move on to the next section of the fort, I just want to show you how you can add more detail here. Say I want to create an architrave around this door, so finer detail. What I can do is make sure it's still selected because I want to add to this piece. Go back into my cube grid tool, and you can see here I can change the grid power to change the grid size. So effectively it's going down. So that's block size of 50 if I go down, 25, 12.5, so it's halving or doubling size. What I can also do is I can use, as it says here, Control E and Q to change the grid. So can you see, probably easier if I put it on the concrete. At the moment I've got that meter grid. If I do Control Q or Control E, it doubles or halves the size. So let's go down to I've pressed Control Q twice to go down to a block size of 25. And what I'll do now is I will start in the bottom corner of the outside the door, and I could either just do each part individually, or like when I built out the room, I could build out the whole thing first and then cut through. So I'm creating the structure around the door. So I've surrounded the door with one extra block around the door. Press E to extrude once and click Accept. So now we have this sort of outside of the door, and now what I'll do is I'll go back to the 1 meter grid, so Control E to go back to the 1 meter grid, and I'll select the door opening again, and what I can do is use Control to pull out or push in. Okay, so I forgot to do the bottom bit here, so Control to pull out, Control to push in, and there what I've done is recreate the opening. And now you can see if I sort of get up slightly closer, I've created a finer detailed structure here. So the cube grid's pretty useful for creating not just large scale detail but fine scale detail. And as you'll see in the next part, you're not limited to just square shapes. You can drag corners to create ramps and pitched areas. So what we'll do next is we'll create a lookout tower above this room with a pitched roof. I want to create my lookout room as a separate object, that way I can reuse it in different parts of the level. So remember what I said before, if you've got something already selected, like the floor or this wall, press the escape key so that you're starting off afresh with a new mesh. So let me zoom in a bit on here, and what I want to do is build a second level, sort of a higher lookout room. So back into the cube grid tool. Make sure that your grid power is 5, so you're dealing with 100 meter blocks again. And what I'll do is I'm going to create an 8 meter wide room. So start in this top corner and do 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 width, and then drag back to the back wall here. And then we're going to make this a 4 meter high room. So actually, we'll do a 5 meter, no, 4, yeah, we'll do 1 meter for the floor and then 4 more. 1, 2, 3, 4. Okay, and now I will hollow out the room. So just like I did before, select a block, everything except the outside, and I'm going to press the Q key, 1, 2, 3, 4. If I do it one more accidentally, you can see I've got no floor, so press E and I add the floor back in. Okay, and let's carry on working on this. So let's create a door. So we want to, so that's the base level here. So let's go up 1 from there. Let's do it here and do 1, 2, 3 and a long one. Hold the control key down and drag it in. So we've got a door there. And let's do 1 window for now. You can do more windows later on. So I'll do a nice long window here for our lookout. Hold the control and drag back. We've got a nice lookout window here. Obviously you probably want them on the other side as well because we're looking out, but that'll do for now. Okay, so we've built the door and we built the structure of the door and the windows. Might be an idea to accept now. Press Control B on your keyboard and name the asset lookout room. Okay, so what I want to do next is I want to build the pitched roof on top of this. So with it selected, because I want this to be part of the asset, I'm going to go back in the cube grid and I'm going to select the whole structure here and press E 4 times to create another 4 meter high structure. 1, 2, 3, 4. Okay, and now what I want to do is I want to pitch either side of this roof. So select one half of the roof, so the 4 of the 8 blocks on this side, and now we're going to use the corner tool. So you can either press corner mode up here or you can press Z on the keyboard. So if you're doing this a lot, it's quicker to select, press Z, and you'll see these corner spots here. So I'm going to select the corner here and the corner here, and I'm going to reduce those back down to the floor level. So press the Q key, 1, 2, 3, 4. And let's do the same on the other side. So press enter first to accept that. Select the other side here, Z to go into corner mode, select these two, and again you either can press Q or you can control and drag them down like this. And so what we've got is we've got a 4 meter high pitched roof. So click on accept. So that all looks good. Click accept again. So the first time was to accept the corner changes, the second time was to commit the mesh. Now what we want to do is we want to update the material on the roof to be our tile. So we don't want all to be brick. We want this all this part to be brick, the side walls and the gable ends, but the pitched roofs we want to be tiles. So how do we do that? We go down in our tools to the material edit tool. So you'll find it in attributes, and you can do material edit, and it shows me here the materials that we've got in the level currently. So let me just expand this out so you can see it. So at the moment we have one material slot with the damaged brick in. What we'll do is we'll add a new material, and we'll select our tile, Japanese roof tiles, and now we need to assign it to this particular faces. Now in the selection mode here, you've got various different options. Now the way that it works, you can see there's lots of triangles here at the moment, and you don't really want to be selecting all of the triangles, but the way that Unreal Engine emulates other content editing tools that are face-based is it creates something called polygroups, and the polygroups are effectively the faces, the planar faces. So if we change the brush mode to all in group and you select something like this, you'll see that it selects the whole plane. And if you click it again, or sorry, shift click, it deselects it. So we want to select this one and click to select that one. Those are the two that we want to assign the tiles. Change the active material to our Japanese roof tiles, and then down here assign active material, and click enter or click accept here, and that will commit that. And you can see that we now have the Japanese roof tiles on that particular area. But again, like before, it's a little bit too frequently tiled. So down here in the element 1 where the Japanese tile is, browse, double click to select it, and let's change the tiling. Let's try, I don't know, 0.3, 0.3. See what that looks like. Maybe a bit less than or more than that, 0.5, 0.5. That kind of looks right here. Okay, so the last thing I want to change on this tower here is the tile should really protrude over here. So let's do a little bit more modeling on this so that the tiles come out slightly more on the edge. So to do that, we select our cube grid. Make sure you've got the lookout room selected. Go back into a cube grid up here. Okay, we don't want this wide space, so use Control Q. Let's come down 1, 2 smaller tiles. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to create. Actually, let me just move around slightly. There you go. So I'm going to create a little strip along here. That's 25 centimeters. Press E to extrude it out. Okay. Now select the top face here. Z to go into corner mode. You might have to go in close to do this, to select these. I want to select this one and come over here and do this one, and then use Q to flatten it down. Okay, so we've created this nice overhang here. Click accept, and what we need to do is we need to assign that material to this plane as well. So let's go back down here, material edit, select this little bit here, make sure that the active material is the roof tiles, and assign it. Okay, click accept, and now we have a nice overhang there. Now we could do the same thing over here, but there's a useful tool for doing mirroring in the modeling tools. So if you've done something very detailed on one side and you want exactly the same on the other, we can mirror it across. We'll have to recreate this door afterwards, but that's probably quicker than recreating all of that. So again, with the item selected, let's find the mirror tool, if I can remember where it is. Here it is, within the try model section. So you click on mirror, and at the moment it's placing the mirror plane at one side, so we're getting two versions of that. So again, make sure that you've got your snap on at 100. Select the y-axis here and drag in until you get to the center point, and you'll see that we have the item mirrored here. Now there are some options here. First of all, mirror and append. So we're going to mirror this item and then append it to the model. Then crop along mirror plane, so that cuts out what's on the mirror first before you do this mirror and append. So that's what you want to do. Usually these default settings are what you want. Weld vertices, so if you've got duplicate vertices where it meets, it creates only one vertex instead of two. We're showing preview, and that all looks good. And save mode, it's going to update the asset. So that all looks fine. Let's click accept. And let's now recreate our door. So go back into cube grid. We'll have to press Control E a couple of times to get back to 1 meter. And again, let's make sure we create the door in the right place. That's the floor level here. So let's go up here and do 3 meters by 2. Control and pull it in. Okay, and accept. And there we now have our lookout tower with door, window and pitched roof. And if we wanted to reuse this asset anywhere else in the scene, I could drag it in from here. Sorry, if I Control B, I could drag it in from here, or if I want to, I can just use Alt and drag it from there and create a new one. However, I don't want that at the moment. So that's the lookout tower created. Final thing I want to do in this episode is we need a way of getting up to this doorway. So we need to create either a ramp or a staircase. So let's a ramp wouldn't make sense in the context of the sort of medieval fort. So I'll show you how to create a staircase, but not just a simple staircase. Let's do a staggered staircase so I can show you a couple more of the tools in action. Now we could build a staircase using the cube grid tool, but that's quite time consuming, and Unreal have helpfully provided a primitive for a staircase. So you see here in the shapes, you've got the basic standard shapes, box, sphere, cylinder, cone, etc. They've also created this staircase. So if I click on that, and you can see I can place a staircase in the scene, and then I can adjust various parameters. So let's put it down here, and we obviously need to find out how tall it needs to do. We can do this interactively. So you can see here we can change the number of steps. So maybe make it 24 steps. Let's just move that closer. It doesn't have to be exact at the moment. So yeah, that looks about the right height. We'll move it into place later on. You don't just have to have linear staircases. You can have floating staircases with no support underneath. You can have curved and spiral staircases as well. But for now, I'm just going to keep it simple. Do a nice solid brick staircase. However, what I am going to do is I'm going to create a staggered staircase. So what I mean by that is I'm going to have half of it going up here and the other half coming down towards the guard room. This just gives me an option again to show you a few other modeling tools. So I'm going to leave the default step width, step height, step depth. That all looks good. Let's change our material to, actually let's leave the material for now, we'll add that later on. Now because I want to cut this up, I don't want this staircase, I want to cut it in half and add another block here. So rather than create a static mesh, at the moment let's create a dynamic mesh. What that means is that it will only exist in the level, and then what we'll do once we've got it cut and added the platform in the middle, we'll then commit that to a static mesh. Just means you don't get left with lots of half-finished models in your static mesh folder. So this is the basic shape. Let's click accept here. You can see if I press Control B to browse, nothing happens because it doesn't exist in the project files. It just exists here in the level. So there are different ways you could approach cutting this up, but my view is that the best way of doing this is to use a plane cut tool to cut it in half. That way we'll get two sets of staircases, and then we'll create a cube in the middle for the platform that's halfway up. So to start off with, we need to find this in the try model. There's a plane cut tool, cuts selector meshes with a 3D plane. So make sure you've got your staircase selected, plane cut, and you see that it's cut it in half, but it's cut it in half on the wrong axis. So what we need to do is need to rotate it up to the vertical axis. So make sure you've got your snapping here at 10 degrees so we can quickly get to 90. Use the green Y rotation and start rotating until you get to 90. So or just click minus 90 here. And you can see that it's cut it in half here, but we can't see the top half. So in the options, keep both halves. So now we've got the bottom half and the top half. No spacing between the halves. Yes, we want to fill the cut hole so we don't get an empty space where the staircase is cut. And finally click cut. Accept. And now we have two shapes here. So that's great. So we need to rotate the bottom one and then make sure that it just joins up at this bottom stair here. So let's select the bottom one. Use the rotation tool. If you want a quick way of switching between the tools, press the space bar. That switches between all of the different move, rotate and scale tools. So get to the rotate tool, rotate it around 90 degrees, get back to the move tool, and we'll move it. So at the moment we're snapping to 1 meter, so it's not gonna, we're gonna have to change the snapping to be a bit fine grained in order to get it in place. So let's get it roughly where it needs to be. Then change the snapping down to 10. Try and move it into place. Again, you'll need to get closer up to see this. And you can see even then it doesn't line up because the multiplications of the step size have had obviously a multiple of 5. So let's change this to 5. That looks good on that plane. And that looks fine. Okay, so take your time until this line lines up perfectly with the bottom staircase. Okay, let's press escape, come out of here. So now we have the two staircases. We need to just fill this space in with a box. So what I'm going to do is choose the box shape, click on it, make sure this will probably be set to static mesh at the moment. So we don't want to create a box asset yet. We just want to use that as part of the staircase. So make it dynamic mesh, so it's only in the level at the moment, and then put it roughly into place here. Okay, and then double check that it's not sticking out this side. So if you need to, just move it slightly, and again just check. Moving this up here. Is it on the floor? Yep. Okay, we'll click accept here. So what's a quick way? I mean, we've got snapping on, so you could just we could just edit this and pull up the planes. Actually, you can see here that it's just slightly into that space here. It doesn't really matter because when we join these together, but let's just do that. There we go. So that it's exactly a button. So I'm going to show you how you can drag these planes so that they're level with this. And I'm actually going to do it without snapping on because although in this particular case we know that these are all exact multiples of 10 or 5 and we can just drag into space, you don't always get that luxury. So let's switch the snapping off just to simulate a position where we don't know the exact divisions. And we're going to use a new tool here on the cube. We're going to use the poly edit, and poly edit now allows us to select the poly groups, which is the equivalent of faces, and we can manipulate them. So let's start off with this top one here. So you can see that if I drag this z-axis here, we can pull this up or down, which is great, but other than eyeballing it, I want to get this exactly aligned with the top. How do we do that? Well, we can, as we're dragging, we can hold the control key down and then you can select vertices on other meshes or on itself. So you see what I'm doing is I'm selecting the top corner of this staircase, and now that snaps perfectly to that plane. So similarly, I can go around to the front, start to drag it on the x-axis, hold the control key down, line up with this or hover over this vertex, and it snaps to that. And then finally, let's on the y-axis here, let's start dragging this, hold the control key down, hold one of the vertices on this left side of this staircase, and now we've got it perfect. So click accept, and if I click off that, you can see that everything is perfectly lined up for our staircase. Okay, so this is all looking good. What we need to do now is we need to join all the pieces together to create one asset. So to do that, select each. So select the first space, first part of the staircase, shift select the second one, shift select the third one, and what you'll find in the tools is under the mesh ops, you've got this union, which Boolean unions the meshes together. So click on that, and that creates one item, accept, and you've got the one item staircase. Okay, so a couple of things we've got to do to finish this off. We first of all, let's change the pivot point so it's at the bottom, so when we drag this staircase in, it positions itself at the bottom of the staircase. So to do that, go into the pivot tool, and we can just click on bottom, and that moves the pivot point to the bottom of the staircase. So that's pretty good. And now let's, you probably noticed that the UVs are a bit out of whack. So you see they're very large here and they're very small there. Let's put a material on here and then see how that looks, and I'll show you how you can fix that problem before you commit it to a static mesh. So what we will do is we'll assign a material to this. We can just do it here on the materials. So go into here, type brick. Okay, and then we've got our damaged brick wall, and there's a few problems here. First of all, the scale of the tiling is way too high, and also we've got repetition here. So in the UV, it looks like the stairs are all on the same part of the UV map, so we're getting exactly the same texture on those. So we want to fix those problems, and thankfully there are some UV tools within the modeling tools as well. So let's drag down on the modeling tools till we find this section on UVs. And for items like this where there are 90-degree planes, you can go into UV, you can go to project, and it will default to a planar project, so it's projecting the UV from the top down, which is great for the top of the staircase but not good for the sides or the risers. However, you've got different options here. So what we can do is, instead of a plane projection type, we can do a box projection type, and that is now projecting on all three orthogonal planes. So you can see that all of the planes look good. The scale's still off, but it's not repeating on these steps anymore. So let's change the scale. So let's up the scale to 5 and 5. That's looking better. However, if I compare it to the bricks next to it, it looks as though these bricks are slightly smaller. So let's try 4 and 4. And that kind of looks better. Anyway, you can play around with that, but let's click accept here, and you can see that we've got a pretty nice staircase here. Now there is one thing I'm noticing, which is that if you look at this wall here, it looks much more 3D because the normals are creating an illusion of 3D on the texture. However, these ones look flat. Sometimes when you're manipulating items, you find that the normals or the tangents get out of whack. So luckily you've got ways to fix that. So let's make sure we've got a staircase selected. Go into attributes and you see you've got normals and tangents here. Click on normals and then you can recompute. There's different items here. You can just try the one. So let's try area angle weighting, accept, and you can see that has cured the problem. So it's recalculated all the normals and now we have that nice 3D view here. So final thing we need to do is we need to make this a static mesh. At the moment it's still just in our level, we can't reuse it anywhere. So the last thing to do is to convert it into a static mesh. So somewhere in here, within the transform tools, there's convert. So if we click on that, and the output type now, we want static mesh, we want to transfer the materials, and click accept. And now if we do Control B with that selected, we now have our static mesh. I can rename it to Staggered Staircase. And the final thing I need to do is just move it into place. So let's put the snapping back on. Let's try 10. And that looks pretty good. So that's lined up, and if you need to move it left or right. So let's just test this out. So go into play mode, and I can now run up this staircase, looking around the watch room, go down, go around the rooms, and appreciate all the details. So that's where I'm going to stop on today's episode. You can see that there's a lot you can do just with the manual modeling tools in Unreal Engine. But in the next episode, I'm going to start to look at building automated tools. We'll start off with spline tools for building, again, walls and structures that are easier to put together. And we'll then move on, and we might take 2 or 3 episodes on spline tools because there's quite a few things I want to show you there. And then we'll move on to geometry scripts for, again, automating the creation. So things like this staircase, we'll create a geometry script to create a staircase tool that allows you to create sort of multi-level staircases in very sort of quick time, i.e. sort of seconds. So stick with me for that, and I will see you in the next one. Bye for now.